We on?
We are now live.
Okay. Well, it is 6 o'clock and we'll call to order the Albemarle County Planning Commission for April 28th, 2026. As always, the public can access and participate in the meeting through information posted in the Albemarle County website, specifically on the Planning Commission's homepage and the Albemarle County calendar. During the meeting, there will be opportunities for the public comment on specific agenda items where input is invited. Okay, we'll call to order and we'll check for quorum. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll?
Yes. Mr. Moore,
I'm here.
Mr. Murray,
Here.
Mr. Carazana,
Here.
Ms. Firehawk,
Here.
Ms. King,
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Thank you.
And we have a quorum. Thank you. And now we will ask the public for any comments for items pending on the commission, but not in the agenda for today. Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Does any commissioner like to pull any item for the consent agenda for further review? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Ms. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. King,
Aye.
Ms. Firehawk,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
and Mr. Moore.
Abstention since I wasn't there.
All right. We will move on to the public hearing for CMA 2024-7 and SP 2024-2 Beaver Hill Mobile Home Park. Can we receive the staff report, please?
Good evening. My name is Jared Tate. I'm a senior planner with the Planning Division of Albemarle County Community Development. Tonight, I will be giving staff's presentation for the Beaver Hill Mobile Home Park, an application for a rezoning and special use permit with special exceptions and an ACSA jurisdictional area amendment. The property is located in western Albemarle County on the north side of Three Notched Road, approximately 2 miles east of downtown Crozet. The surrounding area is of rural character with a variety of rural areas uses, including low-density single-family residential, forests and open space, agricultural uses, and the Beaver Creek Water Supply Reservoir. The property is just north of the Crozet development area boundary. So south of Three Notched Road, properties include single-family detached and attached dwellings. The property is 47.38 acres and contains 2 single-family residences, the existing non-conforming manufactured home park, and open fields previously used for cattle. There is a WPO buffer and critical slopes on the property. The property includes a pond and stream as well. The stream drains to the Beaver Creek Reservoir. 23.02 acres are proposed for rezoning. The property lies within the Beaver Creek Water Supply watershed, with the site being approximately 1,125 feet from the Beaver Creek Reservoir. Additionally of note, there is a conservation easement on the adjacent parcels to the west and north. The zoning of the subject parcel is rural areas, as are the surrounding parcels north of Three Notched Road. South of Three Notched Road, within the development area for Crozet, are areas of R4 residential and neighborhood model district zoning. Some uses permitted by right and by special use permit within the rural areas are listed on screen. The comp plan designation for the property is rural areas. The rural area chapter of the comprehensive plan describes the rural area of Albemarle County as containing some of its most valued assets, including farms and forests, historic buildings and sites, and abundant natural resources. Albemarle County aims to minimize new home building in the rural area to protect these preferred uses and prevent rural landowners from feeling pressured to subdivide their land. Multiple comp plan strategies and objectives aim to achieve this vision. The growth management policy promotes residential development in the development areas where infrastructure is available to avoid conflicts with the above-mentioned rural area land uses. The natural resources chapter places importance on water resource protection, especially the public water supply system. Objective 1 stresses that. Additionally, the Crozet Master Plan explicitly addresses preservation of rural edges as stated in Goal 4 on screen. The project proposal is to rezone 23.02 acres of the 47.38 acres subject property from rural areas to R4 residential with a special use permit request to establish a manufactured home park on the site. R4 is the lowest density residential zoning that allows a manufactured home park with a special use permit. Plan on screen shows the concept plan that is proposed. The highlighted area in red is the area that would be rezoned. The plan shows a conceptual layout of an additional 49 manufactured homes to be located within an expanded section. The concept plan also shows entrances, proposed travelways, recreation, trails, some landscaping, stormwater management facilities, and other features. Total gross density proposed is 3.99 dwelling units per acre. The applicant has volunteered proffers to restrict the uses and density of the property and to provide affordability as stated on screen. Certain uses that aren't as compatible or supportive of the surrounding area have been proffered out. The affordable component of this proposal is the only positive aspect of the development that staff identified. However, the proffer for affordability does not currently meet the standards of Housing Albemarle. For Housing's review, the standards of Housing Albemarle should apply to all the units of the site, as the entire site is being rezoned and the existing units are non-conforming. Additionally, affordable rental units should remain so for a minimum of 30 years as opposed to 10. While the proposal could address some of the objectives generally, staff believe the intent of the housing policy is to encourage new development units in the development area. Should the rezoning and special use permit be approved, staff has provided comments on how policy expectations could be applied. The applicant has requested special exceptions to modify or waive supplemental regulations related to manufactured home parks under section 1853 of the zoning ordinance. Staff has evaluated these special exceptions and made recommendations in the SE matrix included with the staff report as attachment 5. As staff recommends denial of the ZMA and SP, we also recommend denial of SE 2024-20. However, if the Board of Supervisors decides to approve the ZMA and SP applications, staff is generally in support of the requested SE application. The Planning Commission is not required to make a recommendation on this special exception application. However, if the Commission chooses to provide comments on the special exception, staff will include those in the transmittal summary to the Board of Supervisors. Based on the factors for consideration as outlined in section 33 of the zoning ordinance, staff has identified the following positive elements and concerns for the proposed rezoning. As mentioned earlier, the positive element is the proposal provides a minimum of 10 affordable housing units. The concerns are the proposal is inconsistent with the rural area goals, objectives, and strategies found in the comprehensive plan. The proposal is inconsistent with the county's growth management policy as it proposes residential development in the rural area. The proposal is located within a water supply protection area for the Beaver Creek Reservoir, and the site contains existing streams within that watershed with inadequate riparian protection throughout most of the property. And finally, the proposal is not currently compliant with Housing Albemarle. To conclude, staff recommends denial of both the rezoning and the special use permit application. Should the commission decide to recommend approval of the ZMA and SP applications, staff recommends the following conditions on screen of approval for SP 2024-21. I'm happy to revisit any slides and take any questions from the commission at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Commissioners, you have any questions for staff?
Sure. So in the conditions for this application, does anything preclude, let's say the mobile home park doesn't seem to be financially viable? Are there any conditions that would prevent it from being developed as apartment complexes or anything that's not a trailer park in the future?
So the rezoning as proposed, of course, is for R4 development. So within that, yes, there are other residential uses that could be proposed under R4. However, within the proffers, most of those uses have been proffered out per this application. So within the application, I believe there would not be development of any other kind proposed or allowed underneath the specific proposal we have evaluated.
In what ways does this proposal differ from a development area expansion?
So per staff's analysis, of course, it's the alignment with the comp plan. Generally speaking, the rural areas aims to keep residential development at a minimum and also at minimum densities. Under the existing ordinance, residential density is half a dwelling unit per acre within the RA permitted, and there are certain other standards that must be met. So I believe the main difference with this and development area proposals is the density. And of course, the other impacts as identified in staff's report.
So, no, maybe I wasn't clear.
Sorry.
If this was proposed as a development area expansion
Yes.
compared to the proposal that we have in front of us, what would be the difference between those and the resulting product? Would this be ostensibly different in any way than development area expansion? And if so, how?
Staff's analysis would be based on different recommendations of the comp plan. So we would be looking at the development areas chapters, of course, and the recommendations therein, as opposed to the rural area chapters. But beyond that, if I understand your question correctly, I believe there would be no real difference other than how staff is, of course, analyzing it, which is a fundamental difference.
Thank you.
I got a few, yeah, I've got a few questions actually.
We can stay on this side.
I'm sorry,
No, we can stay on this side. Go ahead.
Have questions. I thought it was a very clear application.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to double check a couple things. The proffers that would prohibit R4 housing types except for mobile homes. In the event, speaking to Commissioner Murray's question, in the event that this were to be sold to some other owner in the future, those proffers travel with the parcel, correct?
That is correct.
Right. I was wondering, when were these, in the packet, it mentioned that the fields kind of back where these mobile homes would be built were used for cattle at one point. Do we know when they were last used for that?
I am not certain. The applicant might be able to answer that
Yeah,
question.
it's
for
been
you.
a while, and I know our comprehensive plan has goals and objectives to have agricultural uses in our rural areas. I don't see that this parcel is being used for that, and I just wanted to sort of confirm that we don't have any sort of economic activity and agricultural tax base coming with that property right now.
I appreciate the question. Again, I'll defer to the applicant. I believe
Okay.
they'll have more information for you.
Sure. And then I had a call from somebody, and so I wanted to ask this one too, just clarifying something about water supply and ACSA. ACSA, the Albemarle County Service Authority, doesn't have concerns about delivering the needed water service necessarily. It's more the denial would be sort of as part of the package of staff recommended denials, not because there's not enough water.
So in their analysis, RWSA actually does look at capacity, and they did not identify any concerns with deliverable capacity.
Okay.
However, ACSA, of course, had some comments on not connecting to, their comments did not concern the connection. They were acceptable of the connection, but the proposed system would not be acceptable to public ownership and operation of the sanitary system on the parcel.
I didn't hear the last part, I'm sorry.
Sorry, so the,
Sanitary.
yeah, the ACSA comments for the review.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I apologize, stated that they are fine with the public connections as proposed,
Uh-huh.
but they would not be able to accept the sanitary system as presently designed or proposed within the
Okay.
concept plan.
As part of the ACSA managed system.
That is because of the pump station, yes.
So the site is sitting below,
Mhm.
the road, so it's got a, part of the parks are currently served by a pump station, and this would be an expansion, and the service authority doesn't want to maintain the pump station.
Okay. I just noticed as well, of course, this is very close to the Highlands subdivision, and just in terms of kind of parcels per acre or homes per acre, we're looking at about a mean of 0.25 acres per home here, which is actually a little more space per home than across the street in Highlands. I wanted to ask about the proximity of this parcel to the development area. It's really close. Could you throw a paper airplane from this parcel and have it land in the development area?
Believe that depends on your throwing arm.
I have one of these are kind of these odd lines that were drawn in 1980 or whatever, and it just seems so strange to me they would draw this line around 240, like going down 240, when there was a community of mobile homes right there. And I wonder if that was just a tidiness thing to draw a line along a road, or if the powers that be in 1980 just didn't really care about having mobile homes in the development area, didn't want to emphasize that.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with drinking watershed policy. Being this area drains to the reservoir.
Would they have had, can I follow on to that? Would they
Yeah,
have
sure.
had to draw, if they decided to include it in the growth area, would they have had to draw it around the entire parcel, not just the footprint of the homes? That, I mean, I guess we're
That's-
just trying to second guess what happened way back.
I mean, you're asking why, and I recall at one point, years ago, some of the land that was in Crozet that was along 250, a little bit to the east of Clover Lawn, was in the development area. That was taken out. And at that time, they added some of Crozet that is in the drinking watershed into it, sort of a little bit of trade-off of land. But previously parts of Crozet weren't in the development area because of the drinking watershed.
Okay, yeah. I know there are some challenges to getting water and sewer service to certain elevations in that area.
I think it's less about service provision than it was about a policy of trying to keep, reduce impervious coverage in the drinking watershed itself,
Oh,
for an effort to protect water quality and water
In the runoff.
availability,
Yeah, in the runoff that would lead to
Right.
Beaver Creek.
both runoff and as well as just supply.
Okay. That's a question I kind of had too about water supply protection. The stream buffers are kind of part of the package of things we have to protect the water supply, right?
That's correct.
I don't know if this parcel has like sort of remaining development rights in the rural area, but I mean, imagine for a minute that did, if this lot got divided up into 4 or 5 parcels and we built a big mansion on each one, could they put them more or less where the mobile homes are being proposed with the setbacks in place?
Yeah, the by right capacity of rural area development, there, of course, the buffer setbacks, but they're respecting those. Well, they could respect those. And yes, in theory, you could have more a single family house as opposed to these 49
Mobile homes.
home homes.
Sure, sure. Okay, thanks.
So are there, I know in the past, I've heard that there were units, on the site that were in excess of what was previously allowed by other special exceptions. Are there currently any zoning violations currently at the mobile home park?
There are no open violations that I am aware of presently. The park, of course, as mentioned in the presentation, is a non-conforming use on the property, but it is permitted to continue to exist as that non-conforming use under the current zoning ordinance because it pre-existed the zoning ordinance as we have it today.
Thanks.
Commissioner King?
Yes, can you talk a little bit more about the difference between the current stream buffer that was shown on the plan and the limits of the riparian buffer or how that would be affected?
So the WPO buffer, as illustrated on the plan, is the buffer established to protect the existing stream. So those two, I believe, to clarify, are one and the same.
So then therefore the current limits of development would be outside the buffer.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And there's mention in the narrative about the effects on potential effects on water quality related to, the buffer. I mean, I'm guessing it's the watershed from this property goes to the creek. So if we develop the watershed, even though it's not in the buffer, we're going to be contributing to things in the creek and therefore in the reservoir. But that happens all along, right? That happens everywhere, not just 30 or 150 feet, 1,500 feet from the reservoir. Sorry.
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay.
Again, to provide just a touch of clarity here, because of the recommendations of the growth management plan
Mhm.
in terms of directing new units to the development areas for the preservation of the water supply watershed, that intent is to avoid greater impervious surface area within the rural areas and within the water supply watersheds. So the aim, of course, is to keep most, if not, all development away from these sites where possible, that isn't permitted by right within the RA.
All right.
And I think the difference is the development area seems to drain mostly to Licking Hole Creek. So that's managed a little differently than on this side of 240, which drains into the reservoir. Is that right?
That is correct.
My next question has to do with the preservation of view. This the topography of this new section would be somewhat below the grade of the road, right? You were mentioning about the septic having to be pumped.
So if you look at the plan here, let me see if I can queue up my pointer. So you have the existing pond, and then there is the stream corridor. So the topography of the site falls into the stream corridor and then rises back out again this way. So you have a hill sloping down and then sloping back up into the area where the additional units are proposed.
Okay. I think the rest of my questions are for the applicants.
One follow-up question to that. So how would you characterize the quality of the existing buffer in terms of the percent of native vegetation that is in that buffer and actively filtering stormwater from the reservoir?
Currently on the site,
Yeah, currently on the site, would you
Yep.
say that the buffer currently is completely forested, or would you say that it's not?
so the current buffer lacks forested cover. So it is not forested presently.
Thank you.
Follow up to that, and it's likely also was previously a pasture, a livestock pasture.
That is staff's understanding,
Okay.
but perhaps the applicant can clarify that.
Also not good for drinking water.
My questions are for the applicant, so I will ask the applicant if they would like to make a presentation or comments, and finally you have 10 minutes, and you'll have approximately 5 minutes for rebuttal after we hear public comments.
Good day, everyone. I'm Justin Shimp with Shimp Engineering. I'm joined by Polina Andreeva from my office. We are very pleased to be here tonight representing Sprouse family, who this property has been in their family since the 60s. I believe, so Logan, who's here behind me, is his wife, who's his great-grandfather founded this and was a tenant in the park originally, lived in the park. For those, I think everyone's probably pretty familiar if you've been through Crozet, but there's a couple screenshots from Google as you pass by. You'll see the homes are set back There's a lake to the right. If you look in, the property has always, in my time here in Albemarle County, the last 20 years in the area, been very well maintained. And people enjoyed living in this neighborhood for a long time. Our summary of our request, which we went over the staff, they went very thoroughly. So just to reiterate, we are rezoning to R4 with restrictions to only allow the mobile home park and then a special use permit for the manufactured home park. And so that's the only thing that could be developed here if this property were zoned. If the park proved financially viable, nothing else could be done. I mean, perhaps agricultural uses could continue. So that is the plan. I think there is a distinct difference here between a growth area expansion and this zoning application, because growth area expansion would come with just a blanket 3 to 6 units an acre, right? Or comp plan designation, whatever was decided by the commission board at that time. Whereas this is a very specific addition of a specific housing type to the community that's restricted to just that. So an important distinction here versus an overall expansion. This map shows the red outline, which is the subject parcel with the red area being the limits of the zoning. We've broken that down to 23.23 acres, I believe, is the official number of the documents we've submitted. I'll go back to this in detail momentarily. One of the things that interests me most about these kind of projects is a sort of a purpose of zoning. In fact, you could even argue why we're here, right? The planning commission exists as outlined by the state law, which allows zoning ordinances. Planning commissions are deciders of these sort of issues, or bodies that make recommendations. And certainly the county staff always looks at the comprehensive plan for guidance on these and finds this is not matching the rural area growth policy. But if you look at the underlying intent, the reason we have zoning is the top line there is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. And I think that sometimes you look to that to answer these questions. And what you'll know, of course, is maybe aside from food, that housing is the most critical item for human to have. And particularly secure housing they can afford is incredibly important to someone's well-being. And so when I look at why we're here and what the purpose of zoning is, you have to give a high weight into what makes people's lives better, and that is secure housing they can afford. In your comprehensive plan adopted most recently, it's identified that there were 10,070 affordable units needed to be created or maintained over the next to 2040. Back in 2017, there's a data that I have on the screen here, which is from your Housing Albemarle policy, which talks about the then cost burden individuals in Albemarle County. And it's pretty staggering. You'll notice, for example, folks in that 50 to 80% AMI range, 60% cost burdened. Folks who are 30 to 50%, 83%, almost all are cost burdened individuals. And if you look at the 80% AMI number, you look there, those folks are 60% cost burden. That currently is folks making $80,000 a year still cannot find housing by and large that fits their budget. And this is 2017 numbers. I would be certain those numbers have gotten worse, not better, since that time. So that's really the important part about this project is we have to find ways to establish these alternate means of housings. And frankly, it can't be done in the growth area. The land is too expensive. It can't happen. So this site is very uniquely positioned directly adjacent to the growth area. The goal here is to expand the park. There are currently about 40 units here. We're going to add that up to 92 in total. One thing that is confusion, we'll talk about this in a minute. We certainly are happy to meet the Housing Albemarle criteria. Effectively, I think all these units will meet that. We checked the math in the current units. The rents for new tenants, so this is folks new, not who have been there, who have lower rents, is in that $1,100 to $1,750 range. 2 bedrooms up to 3 bedrooms units. If you crunch the numbers on this current 60% AMI in Albemarle, there's an affordable house for all those folks. So all these units right now fit that definition of not cost burdening someone in that price point. So creation of more of these units is certainly a good thing. Another important characteristic of when we look at zonings and special use permits is what is the character of the area? Curiously enough, interestingly enough, this site is 1966. So this project has been a manufactured home park since the early 60s. And I think has essentially established that character. You'll notice most of the other development area neighborhoods around Highlands, Western Ridge, Parkside were farmland at the time. And this was in fact a development preceding all those things. Here's a blow up. You can see in the picture here, that's the first phase of development was here. It was established in 1965, we believe. A lot of the original tenants worked in the Crozet area, and the factories were there at the time, food factories. Right now, there are 43 units, and then 23 of those are tenant-owned, so they own their own homes. Many of them have been there a very long time, and they enjoy the benefit of a very low lot rent and owning their own home, which they call their own and can live in as they choose. Another important statistic, I think, is of current residents, about 80% are on fixed income, and that tends to be very common in these kind of communities. It's a really excellent opportunity if you can get into a spot where you can buy your own home and live there for 20 or 30 years lot rent. If you're someone on fixed income, it's a huge savings. Again, as I noted before, 1965, this was established 15 years for the comprehensive plan, established the boundaries. Concept plan, I'll skip ahead to a few of the details. So here's the north portion. This is all the new units. You'll see we have some passive amenity space. We have the active space, generally detailed the plan. This is all the replanted stream buffer, this area here. So this area would be converted basically from what is now cattle land to a vegetated stream buffer with the development of this property. So we view that as an environmental positive. Here is the south portion. These gray boxes are the existing homes. You'll see there's a few that have been moved out over time. So this would be establishing basically the future master plan for the whole park with the old and new section. There is, as was mentioned earlier, there's a pump station right here that pumps over to the public sewer. So basically that would be expanded. The new units would be gathered in a collection system, pumped to that, and then pumped over to the public sewer system. So we have public water and sewer available to us on this property. One of the county comments, of course, was brought up is 1 and 2, which is this is not consistent with rural area growth policy. And I think that's generally true and has been true, how the policy has been interpreted. But we point out a couple things. One is that really, as interpreted, you can't create affordable housing in the rural areas. I don't think that's the true intent of the comprehensive plan. If you start at the very top of the book and read through it. One of the interesting things, there's a note in here, and it says the comprehensive plan says that affordable housing should be provided primarily in the development areas. And it's true, but primarily implies that secondarily, it's somewhere else. And where is that? And how is that? I think are important questions. And I don't see any way to do it other than this kind of product in the rural areas. So simply, if this is development area land, it'd be developed as townhomes or single family houses because that's the higher and best use. And those folks who can afford that will swoop that land up. So I think there's an important consideration of this that, again, just as zoning as a whole is about health, safety, and for the public, the comprehensive plan is equally about that. And there's parts of it that describe the need for affordable housing. And I think there needs to be a carve out in rural areas, and particularly a site like this, where you're so close to the development area and you have access to public water and sewer to make that sort of project possible. I was concerned about the watershed, and touching this briefly. Certainly, development has an impact on watersheds, but it's also fair to say agriculture does. EPA cites that as the largest source. Now, given much more of a land is agriculture in America, but nonetheless, cattle create erosion, crops create pesticides. These are things in watersheds. We will, with the conditions imposed by special use permit, revegetate those buffers with this, which we think will create a net better condition in the end. I'm going to skip to affordable housing. There was a miscommunication between us and staff on the housing Albemarle requirements. It's been going on a little bit since the adoption of them. This was submitted back in 2024. So we are prepared to meet those, but prior notes, we can get back to this if you want to look at them, and the staff address how this in fact is consistent with housing Albemarle's sense of providing those additional units. Current rents, we talked about those. So I'll conclude with this. So this is a site that essentially established the character of the area in 1965 as a affordable community. It's been a wonderful part of the county, I think, ever since. We have addressed the environmental concerns to our stream buffer plantings. And this project, again, is really consistent with, I think, what we should be here for, which is the health, safety, growth of the public. And that are the things that are nuanced, and there's lots of good reasons for rural preservation. But what you saw is 5,000 individuals in 2017 cost burdened. Something has to be done about that, and we think this is a good solution. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I will start with, actually, if you can pull back your affordable housing slide that you had. I think you kind of went, I know you were running out of time and you were moving through it, that is some of the questions that I have. I'm trying to understand, and you're showing some of the affordability of these homes. And I think you mentioned that they will pretty much all be affordable housing. So why is it a challenge to meet the current guidelines? But I guess I'm trying to understand the two main points here. Why only 10 if they're all pretty much affordable? And why limit the years if, again, they're affordable? So can you help me understand that? Because
Sure. Yeah, and the answer is it's not a problem. The answer to this, whether it's a little bit of confusion, is one, this goes back to 2024, and we frankly didn't understand how some of the housing Albemarle was written in. It had a couple other projects. We wrote the 10-year instead of 30, based on certain language in the code. This just wasn't updated. We're totally fine with the housing Albemarle policy. When this goes to the board, it will be fixed to reflect that. I think, there has been a historic nature of, if, let's say, for example, look at a previous zoning, Hollymead Town Center, right? We had a zoning under the old policy of a certain number of percent, and all the new units above that, housing Albemarle is applicable. So we looked at that same way here. So we said the proffer applies to what's new, but frankly, there's no problem with the proffer applying to what's there, because that isn't what it's been and really what it will always be.
so you don't have an issue amending this so you have the 19 or 20 affordable houses by 30 years?
No, not at all. That's what it should
I'm
be. It
wondering
should
why.
have been that before we got here tonight.
Yeah.
It was a
That would've
miscommunication on
been-
ours.
That would have been helpful. And
Yes.
so I'm just trying to understand that. So in general, are people renting the lot and then they could bring their own unit, or are they renting the lot and the unit? Or is there a mix?
To follow on, you said 23 units were not owned.
It's a mix.
Yeah.
That's right, yes. And so,
And well, that's the current.
correct. And the proposal is to continue that, basically. There, folks can either bring their own home in, set it up and pay the lot rent of, I think it was $475 a month. Or the park can purchase units and rent them to folks. It'd probably be a
It
mix
could
of both.
be either model.
That's right.
Okay. And you wouldn't have an issue then, as you stated, adhering to the policy?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Just out of
Commissioner.
curiosity on that point, because I haven't rented a mobile home myself in the past. The lot fee is for owned units, but the rent that's displayed on the website would also include lot fee, or is that separate?
Correct. No, that includes the entire thing. That's the lot and the home.
Got it. Yeah, just checking.
Could you bring up your slide again, showing the riparian buffers? So are the illustrations where trees are, is that just an example, or are those the only places that you're going to be locating trees?
So the trees shown in the buffer here are sort of representative. Frankly, they're probably not nearly as many. If you look at the condition written by the staff, it talks about planting at a certain quantity per certain codes, and it'd be way more. If you planted seedlings here, it'd be thousands, maybe 5,000 trees, something like that. So this is a representation of the area. The blue would be the area that is revegetated per the applicable standard. But that's more or less what these trees show, is kind of the boundary of that. I will say, let's point it out here for everyone's, so you're aware. One of the staff's questions was, could we also vegetate this section? And some of our hesitation for that, frankly, is there are a lot of folks who have lived in these units for many years that like to view the lake. And that area is very well stabilized. There is turf there that's been there and well stabilized a long time. The area that's a problem is this area that's been a cattle farm since at least 1966. That is, no real vegetation of any kind. So that area would be vegetated with a native buffer vegetation.
So I'm sure you're familiar with what's happened at Chris Green Lake or Mitt Springs, where you have toxic algae blooms that have formed around those lakes. One of the big problems that causes that is actually lack of native vegetation, because if you don't have native vegetation, you have geese that move in. They avoid areas with taller native vegetation. And so all that geese waste flows into the pond, can cause toxic algae blooms. And we had someone's dog die actually in one of our parks because they were exposed to toxic algae. Now that could have been a kid instead of a dog. And so, we're talking about a place with families, and the health risk of having that contamination go into a waterway. So I would encourage you to think about that. It doesn't have to be trees, just has to be native vegetation.
Commissioner Brown?
What's the policy for the, RWSA, like the hookup fee for a mobile home unit or manufactured home unit? Is it different than for hookups in the growth area?
So it's be the ACSA, RWC, you pay a connection fee to both. I believe they're either at 3/4 of a connection fee per unit or an entire connection fee per unit, which would be something we might ask them about reducing if this gets to that point, because basically, in most of these are small 2-bedroom homes, and so they're not gonna have the same water usage as a 4 or 5-bedroom home. But yes, we will pay a large connection fee, and they charge on a per unit basis, to answer your question.
And then my other question is, I think someone brought this up, public comment is about the screening from 240. I mean, it's obviously very beautiful, but it is, a bit of an aesthetic that is not, kind of on point for kind of where we need to be, help infiltrate stormwater, and promote water quality right now. It's like a beautiful mowed lawn, but there are a lot of like chemicals, there are a lot of components like air pollution that go into maintaining that. And particularly around, the pond kind of being like the head of this and moving down, I just wonder, think that your community is like open to changing this aesthetic to something that might be a little more complex and layered and sustainable?
Well, I think that's probably reasonable. I think they might have a concern about trees that would grow and block their view. They've enjoyed that for a long time, but as was noted, they don't have to be trees. It could be other grasses or shorter, species that could populate that space. I don't think that's necessarily an issue to do that. That would be, so basically you're talking about this area, the pond stream buffer here. So here's 240 is right here, and then that pond right here, and this right here is that mowed turf area you see when you enter the site, basically. So you're kind of referring to these zones here, then, it sounds like. Those technically are outside of the rezoned area. I don't know if a special use permit conditions
Yeah,
pick up.
I'm just thinking like
outside.
kind of the whole, like I'm thinking kind of comprehensively about, this as a place. And, I'm from Eastern North Carolina, like manufactured homes is a big part of like rural affordable housing. This is, I understand it's an important part of affordable housing that also like our comprehensive plan doesn't really address in a way at all. So it's kind of like a novel approach every time. But it does seem like, it's like, I'd like to support something because you've already got this started and extended, but I just I'm not seeing like, a commitment to mitigate some of the main inconsistencies with the rural plan around the screening, the character, and most importantly, the stormwater protection. There could be a super strong, like well thought out effort to protect the water quality during construction and to commit to it during the life of the development. But I think without those things, it's a little difficult to believe that there's a way that this effort that we're seeing right now could mitigate these really big gaps in the current zoning.
Yeah, let's respond that we don't, at this level of a zoning action, we don't normally get quite that deep into the weeds. But there have been, like, for example, there's a condition proposed by staff that the water quality treatment be on site, not purchased by off-site credit, and be twice the required amounts. They've said you have to treat double the amount otherwise normally required for this development. So that's an example of a condition basically that while not perhaps seen in a picture here, will require us to produce what you describe in the actual construction drawings. I think this was more typical of this.
Right. But I
It-
think because it's so different, like, I feel like that level of commitment's like really important. To be able to articulate to everyone, your neighbors, the people who work in the water, I mean, all of it. And, so that's just my main concern.
There was mention when you were talking about the pump station, and there's an existing pump station, which is a limited service. And there was a comment about the service authority not feeling like they should take on responsibility for a new pump station. It was interesting, this might be a staff question, but in the staff notes, it referenced the 2015 comprehensive plan. Can you explain?
Yeah, as a matter of policy, what we've been trying to do is, since the plan itself was adopted in October of last year, became active or became, it was implemented, January 1st, 2026. Things that came in were submitted before 2026, reviewed under the previous comprehensive plan, and things after January 1st, 2026 under the new plan.
So can staff speak to how the new and improved comprehensive plan would apply to extending a sewer only partial to this already limited approved space? Would the new comprehensive plan be in favor of that or not in favor like the 2015 was?
Well, I think that both comprehensive plans are going to, they're tied to rural area policy essentially. And so service authority is governed by the jurisdictional areas. Jurisdictional areas usually are only intended to serve the development area. In this case, the question is less about whether or not these things would be served with public water or sewer. It's with the sewer, the service authority doesn't want the maintenance of a pump station.
Sure, I understand. I was just speaking specifically about the reference to the fact that it wasn't in line with the 2015 plan. So my question then for the applicant is it a cost burden for the owner to own and operate the lower station and pump it to the already existing upper station? Would that be an option?
Oh, that's what'll happen. Yeah, the pump stations will remain owned by the park. They've owned that one and operated it for 60 years. It's probably been upgraded at some point in time, but that's actually pretty typical. Those are not especially expensive to operate.
To be clear, the existing pump station is privately owned
Okay.
and maintained. The one that would be farther back on the site to accommodate those ones would be in a similar arrangement, privately owned and maintained.
Okay.
I tell I've confused you and I
Well,
apologize.
so why are they,
You're wondering why.
why are they saying they won't
why do they
maintain
care
it
they're
if they're not gonna
maintaining
have to
it?
maintain it?
Why did?
Why is the service authority noting that they don't want to maintain something they're not
I think
responsible for
I can answer
maintaining?
that one. It's more of like a footnote on their part. When you develop any sort of development, they'll say, oh, we don't want to maintain a pump station. And so really, that's just kind of like their general, hey, by the way, you don't have gravity sewer. So even if you wanted to build a pump station and give it to us, we won't take it. So you're on your own for getting the sewer from your property to the public sewer. That's all they're saying,
And
which
then-
is normal in this situation.
Experience all the service authorities say that about.
Okay,
pump stations.
so it's not necessarily a
Common.
reason for denial. It's just they're saying in the future, we're not taking this over.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my only question.
We'll stay in the sewer realm for a moment. So in reading the staff report, I just want to make sure I have my understanding correct. The septic, the sewage waste treatment was not originally handled by the RWSA. It was added onto the system because they were having a problem with failing septic.
I think that is correct, yes.
So they had to, so they kind of pleaded, please take us on, and so they added them in. And then for water supply, how did they get water supply if they were outside the surface area? They just pleaded their case again, or can you explain that?
I actually don't know the history of that specifically.
Okay.
I don't know. This goes back to many generations. I'm not sure that we know exactly the origin, but at some point in time, I think the Board of Supervisors would approve a limited access or limited scope.
Yeah, we've
water.
done that a few times where we've had a hardship case before you guys joined, and somebody, like they like on a street where weirdly a few parcels were in the rural area and couldn't get, help with fire and rescue because they couldn't have water supply delivered. So the county agreed to extend it on a piece by piece basis.
Well, but
So
the
that
water,
doesn't-
the water line was there when the park was put in 1960, and there were no rural versus development areas then, so the jurisdiction didn't
A while back.
matter,
The
probably.
water authority decided, and the county decided as a growth management policy to restrict access to our water supply.
Right,
to
I'm
limit
suggesting
the
they
amount
tapped
of
it
growth.
before that.
Yeah.
True, that is
That-
possible.
It's been a county policy to not extend it. Just for example, there's a restaurant along the route, and I won't name it, but they couldn't be open for lunch and dinner because they simply couldn't get enough water to operate both times of the day. And because of our policy, they could not hook up to our water line. So it's not that we don't have water. It's that we're trying to limit the growth by restricting access to water outside of the growth areas. So it's a whole big policy that has to do with where we want to grow and therefore where we will provide services and where we will not. And the fact that they do have some service that wouldn't have originally come to them is, a hardship case. As I understood from reading the staff report, especially as relates to the failing septic.
Correct, as it relates to the failing septic. But also the density of other areas of the development area, which could have higher density and therefore put a strain on water resources, are not currently built out to those densities. So it's not that we don't have the supply available. And the expensive part is getting the water to the rural areas. In this case, it's in the street in front of it. So I think it's perfectly
Right, but
acceptable.
I was just giving the policy example because there are places along the water line that we will not allow people to hook up to. So it's not simply that it's physically there. It's got to do with a growth management policy of the county, which the Board of Supervisors has established that policy. So agree with it or disagree with it, but that's where it comes from. I think I've made enough speeches for now.
Thank you. Right, we were open for public hearing. As a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And just one opportunity for each person. Madam Clerk will keep the time for us, and when the little light goes from green to yellow, you'll have your final minute. So we ask that you wrap up your comments. I do have a list. If there are others that would like to speak, then you'll have that opportunity after we go through the ones on the list. Rob McGinnis, and on deck is David Lupke. Please state your name and magisterial district.
Good evening. My name is Rob McGinnis, and I'm here representing the Piedmont Environmental Council. PEC supports the proposed infill housing within this proposal, within the existing manufactured home community, particularly if that infill is affordable housing meeting housing Albemarle. PEC's concerns are focused in part on the protection of Crozet's drinking water supply. It is useful to test this proposal against AC 44's comprehensive plan process for reviewing proposals for expansion of the development areas. The criteria for determining the adequacy of land to be added to the development areas includes, among other criteria, whether the area is in the water supply watershed. And that criteria states the priority should be given to protection of natural resources and public water supply watersheds. I just want to emphasize the word priority. That's a priority. The proposed land development is located within the Beaver Creek watershed, water supply reservoir watershed. Construction of the proposed roads, utilities, and home sites will require mass grading, resulting in substantial areas of soil disturbance only 1,500 feet away from the edge of the reservoir. The site contains stream buffers with inadequate riparian buffer protections. That's mainly focused on the character of the vegetation. You've already heard it's been grazed, and it doesn't have a woodland character in those buffers. The natural resources chapter of the comprehensive plan places importance on water resource protection, especially the public water supply system. Objective 1 of the chapter is relevant: ensure clean and abundant water resources for public health, business, healthy ecosystems, personal enjoyment by preventing shortages and contamination. The proposed greenfield portion of the project may be a good project, but it's in the wrong space. Thank you.
Thank you. David Lukey and Heather Taylor is on deck.
Hi there. Excuse my voice. Yeah, so I'm Dave Lukey, as you heard, and I'm a neighboring landowner. And I will open with comments sort of echoing what you've heard a bunch, sort of concerns about the impact on the water supply. So to paint the picture, the development happens on a hillside that drains directly into this stream. That stream is about 400 paces from the reservoir. And as we've heard, as we've discussed, you know, a primary reason for the creation of the rural area at the time, decades ago, when you look at when I've looked at the history of that and the discussion at the time, it was largely about protection of the watershed, protection of the water supply. And certainly this topic is only more important now than it's ever been. So expanding the mobile home park from the 30, maybe 40 homes currently present to the sort of 92 proposed dwellings, this would more than double the number of allowed home sites. I feel like it would be even a bigger expansion of the actual number of homes if you go and sort of count buildings that are currently already there. So the associated construction disturbance and resulting impervious surface from the homes and the roads and the driveways and so forth, it just cannot avoid, you know, a major impact, both at the moment of construction with all of the construction effluvium and just all of the runoff, you know, with the various chemicals associated with, you know, vehicles and the typical suburban land management. So I would argue this plan runs counter not just to the current zoning, but to the reason behind that zoning, which is, you know, exactly the discussion here. And as you've seen, county staff, including the chief engineer, have expressed this sort of concern about the watershed impact, talked about recommended mitigation measures. And I do think that, you know, things like plantings of hardwood trees and stuff have been discussed. Native grasses and shrubs have been discussed, including just now. I was dismayed by the applicant's response saying that they don't plan to do that. And that's sort of outside the rezoned area. I think that's sort of not looking at it holistically, and that the residents would prefer to retain their lakeside view. You know, I'm again suggesting that the compliance is sort of the most important thing with the water supply protection measures. If we are to account for the viewshed preferences, then I would also suggest we prioritize the view of the Albemarle residents who are driving to and forth on 240 to home and work every single day. I think the view there is actually the view and the connection to the rural area, the connection to Blue Ridge Mountains is exactly one of the reasons why the comprehensive plan, the master plan, Crozet, you know, talk about these sort of hard edges, right? Route 240 is a hard edge, not just because I think it's a boundary of a watershed, but also because it maintains that connection between relatively dense residential development and this sort of almost unobstructed view that you have now from Route 240 over that hillside to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Briefly informing a topic earlier, that hillside was kept in cattle, but was not simply an unwooded pasture. It is actually planted with a bunch of towering trees that have been cut down, and the riparian buffer was filled with large trees that have been cut down. You can still see the stumps. I'll stop now since I'm out of time. Thanks for the work you do, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Heather Taylor.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Heather Taylor. I live in the Highlands subdivision, which is adjacent to the property and in the Whitehall district. I speak tonight in opposition of the rezoning and the 3 linked applications. I would like to make 3 points. First, regarding the comprehensive plan. This application is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan that the Board of Supervisors adopted 6 months ago. AC 44, adopted in last October, states that the county will emphasize efficient land use within the existing development area boundaries and does not recommend boundary revisions at this time. It requires development areas and rural areas to have distinct boundaries without low-density transition areas. In addition, prior to approving the comprehensive plan, the Board of Supervisors added an amendment that states property owner initiated amendments to AC 44 may not include additions to the development areas. The county's own 2025 build-out analysis confirms adequate capacity within the existing development areas through 2044. The Beaver Hill parcel sits outside the Crozet development area, inside the South Fork Ravanna Reservoir watershed, and outside the Licking Hole Creek sediment protection area. Approval of this rezoning request would contradict the protective policies that are in place for these areas. The second item is ACSA's jurisdictional area amendment. By extending the public water and sewer into the rural areas rare by design. The comprehensive plan is clear that the jurisdictional area follows the development area boundary. If granted, the amendment will be cited in every future rural rezoning application in the Crozet viewshed. And third, the affordable housing, Southwood development is a good example of affordable housing within the development areas. Some of these other areas can be used for the affordable housing rather than extending into the rural areas. That way we can preserve the agricultural and scenic beauty of the area. So in closing, it was mentioned earlier about these Scottstown area having a comparable manufactured home park rezoning, and staff recommended denial on that with the same policy grounds that apply tonight. I respectfully ask the commission to follow that precedent, recommend denial, and leave the question of boundary revision to the development area's utilization review and the comprehensive plan itself. Thank you.
Emily Lupke and Michael Crenshaw on deck.
Hello, thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Emily Lupke. I am a resident in the county since 1978, and I am married to Dave Lupke, and we own an adjacent parcel. I just wanted to take a time to state my objections to the rezoning proposal for the Beaver Hill Manufactured Home Community. As we've been talking about, the comprehensive plan's growth management policy states that the rural area will provide land for agricultural, forestry, and the protection of public water supply, conservation of ecosystems, and climate resiliency. It does not mention expanding the development area into the rural area. Rezoning of this parcel to R4 and providing it with a more suburban type of density is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, and as you know, has not been recommended by the county staff in part for this reason. One of my major concerns, again, is the watershed. As we saw, it's less than 1,125 feet to the Beaver Creek Reservoir. And we all should be concerned about the sediment pollution and impervious cover that would create a conduit for that to get into the stream and directly into the reservoir. My concerns have been increased by recent current activity on the property, including the removal of many trees all along the lot line in the upper northeast corner and along the steep slope in the critical zone, which is also part of the water protection area that doesn't have any green tree dots on it in your thing there. It was forested with many large oaks and other native trees. They have all been removed. So I'm a little bit hesitant to think that you should take the word that things will be done, without it in writing, and because that's not what's happening now. The county also spent about $1.3 million in 2008 to put those 229 acres into conservation easement. That was county money spent to protect the watershed. The document itself, if you go read it, talks repeatedly about that is why we wanted to do this and spend that money to protect the watershed. I think it would be rather jarringly inconsistent to rezone rural land adjacent to that, which also has the same quality of being in the Beaver Creek Reservoir watershed and emptying directly into the watershed when the county has chosen this area to be a protected area and part to protect the watershed. So I would like to end with just reminding you that the comprehensive plan represents thoughtful work of both the county staff and committees and everybody in the community. Please, I urge you to follow that and what has been the work of many hard work by many people. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Crenshaw and Michael Monaco is on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael Crenshaw. I'm a resident of Crozet, and I ask you to support this addition of affordable housing in Crozet. I'm only able to live in Crozet because of relatively affordable housing that has been very recently built. So I get to enjoy those views that the master plan talks about. And also I enjoy the people who live there. And I hear from people who actually work in Crozet as baristas and at the bar and at the restaurants that they're driving 64 from Waynesboro and Stanton and other folks from up on North 29 to get to Crozet to do their jobs. They're as much a part of Crozet as any of the folks who live there. And their view of the mountains is driving over them every morning, early in the morning, which is both dangerous and costs them money and time and is bad for the environment because the whole way over that mountain, they're spewing fumes and dust off of their tires. Given that our entire country, and especially Albemarle County, is in a massive housing affordability crisis, I would honestly find it unconscionable to reject this proposal on the basis that we are protecting the rural area. This is immediately adjacent to an existing manufactured park development. It's immediately adjacent to a lot of single-family homes just across the street. And as far as views go, like there are already manufactured homes there, and what I enjoy is seeing that there are other people there who get to enjoy the same mountain views that I do. I've heard from folks, commissioners, that we need diverse types of housing. This is a type of diverse housing that we don't get often, and not in Crozet. We've got a ton of townhomes. We've got a ton of McMansions. We don't have places that are affordable for the people who work there. I've also heard that our housing supply is not resistant to, for example, demand from Northern Virginia wealthy retirees. This would be resistant to that demand. Those folks are not looking to move into manufactured housing. This is a really unique opportunity to get some really great housing in a place that already has utilities available, already has sewer available, and it would be a massive benefit to the workers of Crozet. Last thing is I'm not an expert in riparian buffers, but I hear a lot of fairly generic concerns about the environmental impact of this project. I know concretely that my neighbors are taking dangerous drives and commutes to get to their job in Crozet, where I enjoy living. If we're going to talk about the environmental impact of this site, I want to hear specifics. How much is it going to affect the quality of my water? Is it within or outside of acceptable boundaries? Please be specific about those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Monaco.
Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Michael Monaco. I live in the Whitehall district in Crozet, a little under a mile down 240 from this site. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Livable Seaville to ask you to consider recommending approval of this rezoning. We do have a crisis of affordability in Albemarle County. People cannot live where they work, and people cannot retire in the communities that they have called home for decades. We need affordable housing, housing specifically that does not impose a cost burden on people at or below 80% of the area median income. Manufactured housing is unsubsidized affordable housing, which is a rare thing. We sometimes hear this called naturally occurring affordable housing, but I think we all know these homes don't just naturally occur. If they could, we wouldn't be here tonight. These homes must be permitted and built and will not appear from thin air without proactive action from the county government. Now, personally, I hope I can help allay any worries about precedent setting here. This is a particular, specific, and unique site. There have been manufactured homes on these parcels since well before the establishment of the development area boundaries. This is a perfect opportunity to create manufactured housing specifically because this is an expansion and improvement upon an existing neighborhood. Nor is this tucked away in a far corner of the county, stranding its residents. This site is about a mile and a half from the Crozet Great Value. In 2021, the Virginia State Legislature passed SB 1327, requiring localities to include in their comprehensive plan revisions specific strategies to promote manufactured housing as a source of affordable housing. 5 years later, we in Albemarle finally have our revised comprehensive plan, although of course this application is being reviewed under the 2015 comp plan, which didn't even give cursory lip service to manufactured homes. I confess I am impatient. Will it take another 5 years for this state law to finally touch down and have impact in Albemarle County? First, we had to wait for AC 44. Okay, it's done. Now we have to wait for the zoning modernization. We'll have to wait for the rural area plan after that. And all the while, we will be delaying 50 badly needed affordable homes. Personally, I think if our plans do not allow this project, that's more an indictment of the plans than the project. And I worry that if the county can't approve this rezoning, we are effectively closing the rural area to anyone who doesn't have a cool $200,000 for a 20% down payment. I hope that you will consider what I've said tonight as you weigh your decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If there is anyone else that would like to speak to this matter, please come up now.
Hello, my name is Leonora Crane, and I am currently a resident of the Crozet area. I would like to talk about two things related to this project. First off is affordable housing. This county has a severe housing deficit, specifically for lower income people. The area median income in this area is $60,000. I quickly went to a mortgage calculator to figure out what kind of house I could afford on that salary, and it told me no more than $250,000. If you look at the available houses listed in Crozet right now, all of them range from about $500,000 to $1 million. Obviously, on the area median income salary, I could not afford housing in Crozet. We've heard a lot talked about the development area and not building out in the rural area. I'd like to point out that most of the lots in Crozet are already filled, meaning any potential for affordable housing in the area is quickly dying off. This area is literally right next to the development area. And I think that this planning commission should make an exception to expand it just a little bit outside the development area. Lastly, I would like to talk about water quality. And I would like to consider myself a little bit of an expert on this issue. So there's already a lot of runoff happening in the area. If you go to the lot and look at it, it's mostly mowed turf, and I'm assuming compacted soil. That's going to produce a lot of water volume that's going to be moving into the watershed. And because it's a mowed lawn, you're going to see a lot of herbicides and pesticides applied to it already. I think we should be a little bit more excited about the chance to repair the riparian buffer in the area and introduce more native species that are going to be preventing excess water runoff and a lot of pesticides and herbicides from entering Beaver Creek. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this matter? Seeing none?
I do have, I think, two people online.
Okay.
Mr. Bergenbright? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and where you're located, and your time will start when you start speaking.
Thank you, ma'am. So good evening. Yes, my name is Chuck Ergenbright, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in opposition to this proposal. My residence is 4724 Three Notch Road. I'm currently located in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, wrapping up a 30-year military career. But that address has been my home of residence for the entire 30 years. Before I start, I'd like to start with some clarifying points from what I've heard so far in the meeting that I don't think have been covered. The property currently has cattle on it. As David and Emily stated, the native vegetation that used to exist along the entire length of that stream bed within the proposed area that did have native vegetation on it until the current property owners removed it. And I think that was a little over a year ago, and it has not been replaced. Regarding the topic of septic, in order to connect that new pump station to the existing pump station, you're going to have to pump that sewer wastewater across the stream that leads into the Rivanna Reservoir. And also that current septic system has had a history of failure over the life of that current park. As I deliver the remainder of my statements here, what I'd like you to consider is the Shimp Engineering statement pointing out that health, safety, and general welfare of the public is the most important consideration and reflect on that in the following points while you keep that in mind. This proposal is not a close call. The county's own staff, policies, and applicants' plans all point in the same direction. This rezoning should be denied. First, this application is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The property is designated a rural area where the county explicitly states that new residential development is not desired. Staff have already determined that this proposal is not supported by rural area policy and is not recommended for approval. Second, this project introduces suburban density, specifically 92 units on just over 23 acres, into a projected rural area. That is not compatible with the character of the area, and it directly undermines the county's growth management strategy. Third, this site is located within a public water supply watershed, less than 1,000 feet from Beaver Creek Reservoir. The applicant's own plans show roads crossing stream buffers, stormwater directed towards those buffers, and wastewater infrastructure to include a sewer pump station located adjacent to the drainage pathways. These are not theoretical risks, they are shown in the plans. At the same time, the applicant has declined full buffer restoration and continues to defer critical environmental protections to the site plan phase. This is backwards from how I understand this process is supposed to work. Rezoning grants permanent development rights. This isn't approved first and then figure out the risk later. Fourth, infrastructure is not adequate. The plans show rural road standards, limited access, and unresolved fire and traffic concerns.
Mr. Urgemar, you're at time.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. O'Malley. You had raised your hand. Do you still want to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have. Please state your name and where you're located, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you. My name is Bill O'Malley. I'm a Whitehall resident of Crozet, also board president of the Westlake Hills HOA. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and I want to begin by acknowledging that staff reached the correct conclusion. This application should be denied. The proposal is fundamentally inconsistent with the county's comp plan and clearly defined growth area boundaries. My concerns are sixfold. Number one, precedent matters. Nothing more important than precedent in these type of decisions. Approving this request creates a slippery slope. Once exceptions like this are granted, it becomes increasingly difficult to uphold the integrity of the growth area. Water resources, number two, are irreplaceable. This watershed it's beautiful. I love Beaver Creek. We don't get a second chance with water. As noted during the Planning Commission discussions, native vegetation and proper stream buffer protections are critical. Also, school capacity is already overextended. This is well documented. Crozet area schools are operating under strain. Advancing additional development without aligned infrastructure just stresses out the system further. Infrastructure commitments remain unmet. Residents in Crozet are still waiting on key infrastructure promised under the comp plan. It's premature and inappropriate to expand beyond the growth area. Even one unit. Community opposition was clear. Public input's been consistent against this. And track record needs to be considered here. This applicant's track record with water resource management and stream buffers certainly should raise concerns. The issues observed in the Montclair development, they're well documented, and they should not be overlooked when evaluating this request. If any of the new planning commissioners need information on this, just Google Crozet Gazette and Montclair, you'll find a lot. In closing, approving this application would set a damaging precedent, one that undermines planning principles, strains infrastructure, and puts critical environmental resources at risk. I respectfully urge you to support staff's recommendation and please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else?
No, sir, I don't have anybody else.
Ask the applicant if you would like to respond to any of the comments you heard. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I think I said a number of times by the speakers, but let me reiterate, this is a very unique property. I don't think there's another one that a mobile home park unit this predates even the comprehensive plan, 1966. It's directly adjacent to the growth area. Why it wasn't included, who knows? We don't know that, and that's not necessarily important right now. But there was a comment made that I think was very appropriate in the sense that if you have no place in our process for this sort of project, that means you have no place for housing under 100% AMI in 95% of the county. And while I realize the comprehensive plan speaks to rural preservations are important things, we're talking about this new greenfield area, if you will. It's probably, we're zoning 23 acres, so maybe we have 10 acres of development to house 50 families. That is not a substantial amount of land to be disturbed to provide housing. Does not cost burden individuals, 50 households. There's always going to be an impact of development. Every time we turn a shovel anywhere, it eventually drains to a stream, right? It's always going to be the case. These things are mitigated with engineering solutions for erosion control. Pump stations have 2 pumps to make sure you don't have overflows. There's regulations in the county about stream buffer restoration, how it's to be planted. And here, maybe we go to the board, we can think about how we can enhance some of those conditions to make it clear that these things will be above and beyond in the circumstance. But I think, without that, you have to go back to the things I started with. The purpose of zoning is to protect the health, safety of the public. And I think for too long, we've sort of ignored a segment of the public. And that's the folks who need this kind of affordable housing. That's why you've seen a situation where over the years, the renters have been pushed out. As was noted, the folks who work in Crozet are driving over the mountain. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for them. So this proposal, while we recognize it's outside the growth area boundary, we are not amending the growth area boundary. Taking a very special circumstance that I think probably exists only here, requesting that it be expanded so more households can benefit from living in Crozet and enjoying the beautiful views themselves. And I don't have to be wealthy to do it. And I think those are all wonderful things. And I do think that the overall positives of this outweigh the negatives. There are environmental impacts. There will be of any development. But 10 acres for effectively 50 affordable units in the heart of Crozet, I think is a very worthwhile endeavor. So for those reasons, we hope you support this and happy to answer any last questions that you may have.
Yes. Can you address some of the comments by the public about the cutting of trees that had been along the water's edge or at the edge of this development? They said that they testified that trees were cut maybe a year ago or so. And I'd be curious to know if there were trees and they were cut, were they cut as part of a forestry operation or were they cut in advance of this application so that they wouldn't have to remain? I asked that. I know it sounds like a loaded question, Mr. Schimpf, but I've experienced other cases in the county where that has occurred. So I just want to hear your side since people brought that up and it's out there.
Yeah, the property changed like ownership in the family maybe about 2 years ago.
Okay.
They have endeavored on a bunch of property maintenance items on their land that they're entitled to in a by right, RA zone. I've not been discussing with anyone about particular trees or anything like that. But you're correct. They have, since taking ownership, there has been some activities out there, but they've been effectively, the use is permitted. You can cut trees for firewood, et cetera. But I can't speak to anyone's motives because I don't know. But it is true that has happened since the property changed ownership. I can confirm that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I do. It seemed like the rezoned area excludes a lot of streams that could be potentially buffered. And so I'm just wondering about the decision for that. I mean, I think a lot of the concerns here are about the direct impact on the water supply. And it seems like the rezoned area in some cases was sort of strategically chosen to exclude areas that could or should be buffered in terms of the parcels that are there. So can you speak to, why not just include, all the parcels that are affected and buffer all the streams?
So the zoning boundary, you can see through the alignment here was based on what's there and then kind of the area. And then it's also based on, so we have, a certain number of units, a certain areas required. We struck a straight line basically across. I would note, so the Sprouses, Logan's house is here, his father's house is here. So they do plan to use this land for sort of agricultural purposes, and manage the expansion of the park themselves, their family business, basically. So there was an interest in not, imposing, development restrictions on an area they may still want to farm, essentially. I think there's been some comments about, for example, this area over here, could that be included with, grasses and not mowed turf, for example?
There's also a buffer on the other side.
Way down here.
Yeah, well, there's there, and then there's one also to this, would that?
Oh, over
bound-
here?
Yes, correct.
Right. Yeah, I think that was just so far removed from the development. We didn't pick that. We picked a logical line that sort of met the area. We weren't trying to zone the whole property R4 effectively. And certainly anything in the development area, we propose to have the buffer, implementation. As just a question of, outside of that, what's the boundary? The embankment of the dam, that really needs to be able to be maintained. But I do think there's probably areas around this pond that maybe could be looked at differently. But the reason it's drawn that way is it was just a line of the development with the intention the Sprouses maintain their land as agricultural.
Yeah, and then my other question is more, we've had, we went to AC 44 has gone on for quite a while here. And we had a lot of discussions about expansion of the development area and uses that we could have. And there is a pending discussion about the rural area plan that's going to be coming up. It's said there that there's some notes about like having discussion about mobile homes and where they could be located. Why not wait until after that has occurred? And my understanding is it should be happening in the next year, right? Or year or two. This mobile home park has been here for quite a while. Why not wait until the community has had the opportunity to have those discussions about where mobile home parks should be before presenting this application?
Well, two reasons. One, certainly when the current family owners, got a hold, they're interested in this concept. But they asked us to pursue it. But I think secondly, frankly, I've lived through a long time of talking about plans for this, plans for that, plans for that. And they always take twice as long as you think to get implemented. And that's just part of the process. This has taken a long time implemented, but I personally like to see actions that can get housing built for folks. I really do find that an important endeavor, and it's good to talk about things at a high level and plan, but sometimes you got to look at a particular property and say, this makes sense. You may not agree it does in circumstance. I don't know how this will shake out, but we believe it does make sense and are prepared to bring it forward now on the grounds we presented essentially. We'll see how it shakes out. I recognize it's part of the discussion, but at some point in time, you got to put a shovel in the ground and put a roof over someone's head. I mean, I feel like now's the time to do it.
You have a question for the applicant?
I do. Um, so with the, I'm assuming there were some comments about improving the plan from staff. So some of that would be increasing the water protection area, build out, I guess. So, and we talked a little bit earlier about that area, that portion to the north of the stream was a cow pasture at some point. And I've looked at it, on a GIS map. I don't see any trees anytime in the recent future, so I don't know if that's true or not. But do you know, or does the applicant know how long ago there were actually livestock in that field?
I know in my time dealing with this property, there have been cows out there because I've navigated them walking around. I couldn't tell you if it's been a year or something like that, but in that range. I just
Somewhat recent.
somewhat recently, yes. I think this photo shows, I think that's the condition in 1966 also.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for a long time, but also recently, it's not been a decade or something like
No,
that.
no, ma'am.
I think that's important because, and I'll say it now and also during comments, there's an opportunity to take an existing runoff problem that's potentially polluting the water supply and make it better.
The cows being the runoff problem.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
point out that historic imagery shows that there was a woodland canopy along there until 2024 in satellite photos. And I think that, unfortunately, like speaks to the spirit of the commitment around the buffer, which is a little concerning.
No more question for the applicant. I'm going to close public hearing. And then I'll bring it for our conversation here in the dais and open it up to Commissioner Brown. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll say, in context of the existing use and the proximity to the growth area and the need for affordable housing, I really wanted to be compelled by this application, but I feel like it really falls short in any commitment to protecting the water quality, to protecting the rural character, to commitments for handling what we know would be a real disturbance during construction and ongoing use. I think, there's a way it could be made much more compelling. It is a very difficult site to make this work. But I just don't feel like the commitment is there based on what we've seen with the trees and what buffer was there being felled, and by a lack of buffer there right now. I think that the spirit of it, which seems to prioritize the view of this lake or pond, needs to really shift to prioritize our ecology in order to make this work and turn it around.
For many of the reasons that Commissioner Brown pointed out, I am in favor of, in general, this application, specifically the current use is a mobile home park. And so I think regardless of it being in directly adjacent to the rural area, it is really a continuance of the same use with just an addition of units. I think that is a significant opportunity for us to add affordable units that are, permanently affordable without subsidy. And I think that's important. I mean, obviously, they're not permanent homes, but they will forever be serving an income population that average housing does not. One of the objectives in the building of residential units in the rural area is equity, making things equitable. And I think that's a good reason. That also has to do with expanding the water and sewer utility to that location, which I think is important. I think the fact that it's in the street already is a no-brainer. I understand it may not align directly with prior recommendations, but there's already a limited use permit, so that doesn't bother me at all. In general, I think that the applicant could improve the application by providing more protection for the water buffer, more plantings, more refurbishment, maybe changing some of the setbacks. I would say that probably the watershed is my only hang up at this point.
All right, my turn. All right.
All yours.
Thank you.
Commissioner
I'll
Farley.
try not to get carried away. So I have three, I'm not supportive of this proposal, and I have three reasons why, and I'll just try to elaborate quickly. I want to first start out with, before I do that though, to say that I'm very supportive of affordable housing. I've worked in the affordable housing field my whole life. I've benefited from affordable housing in this county. But we went through a long process to look at the comprehensive plan to try to keep our growth pattern compact. That was the time to decide whether this track should be added in. I'm not willing to sit on the dais and then say we went through this, it was almost 6-year process to adopt this comprehensive plan, and then to say, but if it's an affordable housing project, then we'll just redraw the lines. If that's the policy of the county and the Board of Supervisors wants to adopt that, I just need them to let me know. But that is not the process that we follow. The second thing I want to talk about is the fallacy of saying something is impactful, so we should continue to have impact. And by that, I mean the fact that it's been brought up repeatedly, this is a cattle farm, that there's an impact. I'm disturbed to hear that the woodland was removed along the waterway. Several people have said tonight they're not a watershed expert. I am. I spent 35 years as a watershed planner. I wrote a book on riparian buffer construction, and I did a habitat restoration project on Licking Hole Creek. So I do know this area very well. A 100-foot wooded buffer can remove more than 85% of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment runoff. And when you look at a lawn, as beautiful as it might seem to some, that's full of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, which are the three contaminants of concern to the Chesapeake Bay. Our county has good drinking water quality, and there's a reason, because we protect our watersheds. I've worked in multiple counties in Virginia, and including, I'm not going to name them, but where they can't drink that water out of their lake or their reservoir anymore because they allowed it to be contaminated by excessive development around the perimeter. And a lot of that was lawn runoff. A very, very important recreational lake in particular in Virginia. So I think that we need to think about the watershed, the protection of the watershed. And I noted also in the application, it said that driveways would be gravel, so they would be pervious. That's not really true. When you have a driveway made out of gravel and you drive over it and over it, there's something called effective imperviousness. It's an engineering term. It means that when you have gravel on top of dirt and you park over it again, it becomes as impervious as asphalt. You might as well have paved it. So this development is more impervious than you realize. I would like to see mobile home parks be an allowed use in Albemarle County. I would like to see tiny houses and tiny lots be embraced, but I am not willing to sacrifice the health of our watershed. And if the landowner, or if anyone is concerned about trying to restore the health of that reservoir, to keep the reservoir healthy, James River Association has a free tree planting program where they will not only plant the trees, they will maintain them for you. The Virginia Department of Forestry has the Virginia Trees for Clean Water program. They will give you free trees and money for labor and watering if you would like to install the trees. And finally, the CREP program, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, has a program which I got my neighbors excited about, and they now do, which is you fence your cattle away from the stream, you restore the buffer, and you get paid money for it. The government pays you acre by acre every year for doing that. So, and Lonnie knows this because he's a part of the Soil and Water Board. So there are many, many opportunities to do a better job than the current landowners have done. And again, if there may be some who say if it's affordable housing, as you have said, then we should just, redraw the boundary. We went through a long process. The boundary is what it is. The county has talked about having a process for expanding the boundary and to create that. That was also something we said they still haven't created that yet. So I would be willing to entertain that under that kind of process. But I think I've said enough and I'm going to stop and pass the baton.
And I'm just gonna continue this way and sitting to my right and my left, I have two experts in this area. I'm not gonna focus on the stream buffer, although to me that is it's a no, because I don't see the effort into trying to work with the county and coming up with a better plan. What I will say is that this commission, as long as I've been here, have been very supportive of mobile homes. And in fact, what we've seen is a trend of getting rid of mobile homes for higher density. Every time we do that, we get rid of affordable housing because that's what they are, 100%. And that's what I couldn't understand about this application. Why would we not follow the Albemarle County policies for affordable housing when it's affordable housing? 10 years versus 30, 10 versus 19, the entire parcel is being asked for the amendment, so it should all count. If it's all affordable housing, why create that limitation? I couldn't understand it. Mr. Schimpf, with all due respect, I don't think I got an answer to my question. You basically said that we would change that. So going into it, we didn't do it. So I'm not sure the commitment's there, both in the buffer and in the affordable housing, although it should all be affordable housing. So that language should change and we should be following the policy. For those 2 points, I think there's an opportunity here to make this work. And I do think that there needs to be more conversation, dialogue with staff, and between the two come up with a plan that would work. And actually we could get this affordable housing, which we need.
Yeah. So I have a tale of two trailer parks. Not long ago, Crozet Mobile Home Community came before this commission and asked to expand. And what we saw was residents in Crozet came out in support of that mobile home park. So it's very interesting to compare those two applications. One was consistent with the Crozet master plan and one is decidedly not. One was consistent with the county comprehensive plan, one is decidedly not. I find that Crozet is very supportive of affordable housing, including mobile homes, where it makes sense. And I am too. Make no mistake, this is a development area expansion. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Similarly, if a rural area is granted growth area density and public water and sewer, it is a development area expansion. So let's be very clear about that. Multiple times the question of growth area expansion came up during AC 44, significant public comment, and the expansion was rejected multiple times. The ink is not even dry on AC 44. Going back on that now would create a lack of public trust in the process. Now there's a reasonable conversation to be had about where suitable places trailer parks might be located, including in the rural area. But the right thing to do is have that conversation first with the public, not make ad hoc decisions that create winners and losers. Think for a moment, if we were to choose a place to add mobile homes or expand the development area, would this be it? Maybe yes, maybe no, but we haven't had that conversation, have we? The rural area plan might be a reasonable place to have that discussion for how we can accommodate manufactured homes. It is worth noting, though, that you can have a manufactured home currently in the rural area. I have neighbors right now that have manufactured homes and trailers. Yep. It is an allowed use. So I think that even if a decision was made to expand the development area, the growth management policy of AC 44 lays out how and where that might happen. It specifically says we should avoid areas with sensitive natural resources and places that could impact our water supply. After all, we've been told that Crozet already has a limited water supply that can only accommodate a limited amount of growth. My understanding is that it will run out in 2040. We won't have the ability to accommodate more growth projected at that time. If we allow it to fill with sediment, we've harmed our ability to build out our existing development area in Crozet. This is not hypothetical. The reason we have a rural area, the reason it was created, was concerned that our water supplies would be impacted by development. And looking at the South Fork Reservoir, which was one of the main concerns of the why the rural area was created, it is now full of sediment. So, go and look at that reservoir, see what's happened to it. It is full of sediment. That prediction came true. So even if this was a good use and consistent with the comprehensive plan, as staff has pointed out, it doesn't even meet our existing standards. It has 14 different exceptions. Our purpose as Planning Commission is that every locality shall by resolution or ordinance create a local planning commission in order to provide for the orderly development of the locality and its environs. If we believe it's our mission and that planning is important, we should deny this request because this is not a plan. It's not consistent with our plans. It is the antithesis of planning.
Okay. There's actually kind of two different things I want to talk about here, and there's the scalpel and the cudgel, and honestly, this project feels more like a scalpel. We're kind of going in and making what's really kind of a minor change to a bigger, comprehensive plan and everything. It's expanding an existing use of what's already a mobile home park in a way that's sorely needed. We've talked about affordable housing already, several of us. I don't have any. I don't see the same conflicts that some of you all do in that front. Having another 4 mobile homes and what's already a mobile home park feels acceptable to me on that front. It's homes for people. And that is sort of my guiding light first and foremost is sort of like the direct needs of people. It's right next door to the development area, like literally across the street. And, in my mind, that was left out for probably arbitrary historical reasons. It is supplied by water and sewer already. We have stream buffers to keep our water, water supply clean and high quality. That's my understanding of stream buffers, and I think this complies with them. And so I feel like it's an acceptable scalpel exception to the norm. Calls for slowing down, calls for being, the sort of good orderly planning, of course. But in this case, that means 4 families are gonna have to move to Augusta County or Fluvanna County and commute long distances to get to work. So that's, the thing I think about when these kinds of proposals come before us. Within that scalpel of a project, I echo Commissioner Carazana's questions about sort of the housing Albemarle policy compliance. If you take this to the Board of Supervisors, make that really clear, and instead of sort of saying like, oh, no, it's great. Like just comply with the policy from the jump and it might be stronger. And I think also other commissioners' questions about water runoff, ensuring that native plants and good buffers are constructed, make that extra clear too if you take this to the next step. So yeah, I am in favor of this proposal enough, and I would encourage those improvements. I also want to sort of set the scalpel down and actually bring up my own cudgel for a minute and just talk about the development areas. I totally understand they were developed or they were put in place to keep the rural areas rural. I appreciate that. I personally enjoy the rural aesthetics we've got around here. I definitely enjoy having a clean water supply. Some of y'all know I was on the ACSA board before this, and that's the water and sewer is curiously kind of the civic thing that got me here first. Those development area boundary lines were drawn for whatever reasons they were drawn. Some make obvious sense, some are a little strange. And then back then, when those were first drawn, it was 10% of the county's land. A lot of y'all, maybe not everybody here, but most of us know that history, that it was, some 48,000 acres. In the early 80s, that got cut in half. And now we're down to just 5% of the county's land. And we're hemmed into this really small space, and more that's putting a real burden on the housing supply, a supply that's not keeping up with demand. And so housing costs keep going up and ballooning. And so then people who have to work to live can't live here. They come in for work or they have to live somewhere else. And that's not a community. They're being priced out. So I believe we need to work toward a development area that's closer to that 10%. I would encourage this body to start eyeing parts of the county that are well served by transportation routes and that could be served by water and sewer and that don't directly feed into our reservoirs. I would love to see us start drafting possibilities for consideration and working toward making space for people to live flourishing and dignified lives in the county where they work. You know, if we're doing good orderly planning, let's start looking at that. You know, where are we going to put it? Where are we going to build out? Where are we going to plot it out? And I also want to just sort of add to that, you know, a housing market, adding more market rate housing is part of the solution. It's not the only solution, obviously. Maybe not obviously, but it is, you know, an important part to expand the supply. You know, we also, but it's not going to do it alone. We also need, you know, a robust social housing sector that is sort of public housing for lots of income levels. We also need limited equity housing co-ops and land trusts and actually investing in those things that make a lot of affordable housing available across the whole county. And we also need jobs that pay really well, right? And so I want to transmit to Richmond to get rid of right to work so we can have unions that actually is the other sort of income side of housing affordability. I'm using my bully pulpit here. It's May Day almost, so I'm going to talk about labor unions. Anyway, you know, and I think really that's an economic development question as well, which I know in some circles around here is a dirty word. But I'd like us to think about economic development in a way that actually brings in jobs that pay well so people can afford those houses on the income side as well as the price point side. And so those are my my thoughts for today. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
We all had one, so it's only fair.
Yeah. So I mean, we have some tools that are in place that are not perfect right now, like rural preservation developments, that allow for clustering and other things. And, you know, we have the ability, you know, to have things like bonus density. So there's conversations that could be had about ways that we could create places where mobile home parks are reasonable and make sense. It is worth noting that I think about, you know, like Old Trail, and I can show you two parcels, one that's just in the development boundary and then one that's just outside the development boundary, and the price difference between those two parcels. What happens, you may say, well, it doesn't matter if we just, you know, go and expand the development area a little bit this way or that way. When you add additional uses, when you say that something is now R4, you've dramatically increased the value of that property. You know, if we were to go tomorrow and say, you know, here's an area of the property, I may think it has great conservation value and we're going to do another downzoning. I bet this chamber would be full of people talking about how we're going to take away their property rights, right? But that's a double-sided coin. The government has the ability to take away property rights, is the same one that adds property rights. If we're going to magically create development rights and add them to this parcel out of thin air that don't come from anywhere, we've given value, real value, monetary value to one property owner. And I think that, you know, in accordance, you know, what that does is, you know, when you expand the development area, you are increasing the value of this property. So I think you need a bigger picture discussion before we consider things like expanding development areas or adding R4 density to the rural area, about the economic implications and whether, you know, we are effectively creating development rights out of thin air and creating winners and losers. I mean, I think, yeah.
I would love to speak to that. I mean, what's happening instead is we've put a belt around the waist of our development and we've created false scarcity. So right now, the reason that it is so expensive inside the development area for those parcels is because 5%, but 7% of 5% is all that's left, and those are the difficult areas. So when you have scarcity, you do not have supply. And yes, you're correct. When we finally figure out 25 years from now where we're going to finally go, we're not going to have the infrastructure. We're not going to be ready to do it. And it's going to take another 25 years to build the first house. So, but when that happens, yes, those people will gain value in their property. And we need that. We need that property to build homes because people keep moving here. They're not going to stop moving here. So, I mean, you just can't restrict the market like that and expect people to be able to afford it. It's not gonna happen.
One of the points that I thought was really interesting during our AC 44 process was understanding that we actually underbuild. So we did not take advantage of our density that we could have been doing since 2015. So part of the issue is the income that we have here in this area. And that's going to change again. And we have significant companies, talk about economic development. We have biotech companies that are coming in here, major companies that are spending billions of dollars in this area, and they're going to attract thousands of employees, very high paying salaries. That's going to increase our AMA again. We are not affordable, even at 80%, 60%, it's really not affordable to most people. So we need to start thinking beyond just adding more development and getting 20% of those houses as pseudo affordable, because they're not. So unless we really start thinking about some P3 initiatives where we really partner with industry and with government to begin to think about how do we really create affordable housing? Because right now we're not doing it, and we're probably losing more affordable housing than we're building. So our policy, in my mind, and then this is a conversation that we've had here for a while, has to change, because we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, and we all know what the definition of that is. So it's not just that we're restricting the area. It's simply that we're not actually even building out what we can and haven't been doing that for a while. So then we got to think differently. It's not just about adding,
It's about both.
it's about both, but what we're adding is number one, it's not affordable, even at the 20%.
So more homes make homes more affordable.
So I would question that assumption because
It hasn't.
if
Not
you're
here.
talking about local, if we're talking about supply and demand, and I don't want to get in a big economics discussion here, but supply and demand, it assumes a local supply and a local demand, but that's not what's happening in Albemarle County. We have a lot of demand from Northern Virginia, from retirees who could live in other places, but have decided to live here because for them, this housing is relatively affordable compared to their housing. So those discretionary people that are influencing our housing market, it doesn't take very many of them to blow up the price of an entire neighborhood.
And we don't have control over that.
We don't, exactly. So this whole idea of supply and demand is really flawed because we're not dealing with a local supply and demand. We're dealing with a statewide supply and demand. And I'm not sure that we can build enough houses in Albemarle to satisfy a statewide demand. So I think just building homes is not going to cut it. Now, you had a great idea a while back. Then maybe Albemarle County should purchase or use one of the existing properties that it owns.
Social housing, yeah.
Yeah, to
I
build
agree.
housing. I 100% agree with that.
But I agree.
In fact, even if we were to say, hey, let's expand the development area, why don't we just why does Albemarle County buy the piece of land itself and build the houses itself on that piece that's expanded? That would create some amazing affordable houses.
I mean, the
You
answer
can
to
also
that is
partner with major industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That we have, coming Eli Lilly, well, they're
Because it
not in
costs
Albemarle
money.
County, but they're nearby.
It costs tax dollars to do that.
Yeah, the answer to that is financing.
And that's why I think the partnering with the private industry, which it is not new. This is done in many places across the country.
Well, indeed, in Crozet, a lot of the houses that are built in Crozet were built, as workforce housing, and so, yeah.
We're not going to solve it here
We're not
today. But it is, I think what it does show is that this dais has a passion for housing. We've been struggling for a while, and we're not really seeing a lot of changes. And from my standpoint, this is a site that is very sensitive. It's probably doable, but it requires some conversations with staff to see if there is a path. Right now, I'm not sure that enough of that happened, and we got the proposal that we did. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Okay. I move to recommend denial of ZMA 2024-00007 Beaver Hill Mobile Home Park for the reasons stated in the staff report and the ones discussed.
Second.
Discussion. Madam Clerk?
All right. Ms. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. King,
Nay.
Ms. Firehawk,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
No.
Thank you. It carries 4-2.
Thank you. Moving on to,
Is there a
Have to
motion
do
for the
with
special use permit?
SP as well.
did we have to do a motion?
Exceptions?
Do we still have to do a motion for that?
There needs to be a motion for both the ZMA, which you all just made, and then for the special use permit.
Right. Do I have a motion for the special permits?
I move to recommend denial of SP 2024-00021 Beaver Hill Mobile Home Park for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Moore,
No.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Carazana,
Aye.
Ms. Firehawk,
Aye.
Ms. King,
No.
Ms. Brown.
Aye.
Thank you.
The commission's gonna take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back here at 8:05.
You're welcome, Michael. Thank you.
Committee reports. I was asking. You're going to open it for committee reports. Any commissioners that had any committee reports?
Yeah, she started choking on my.
On the 16th, we had a meeting with the Fifth Street and Avon committee, and I think one of the interesting presentations was about this connection under 64 to Azalea Park along Old Lynchburg Road, from Old Lynchburg Road. And that's set for completion around October of this year. The two concerns about other gaps that participants brought up while we were there was this concern about mobility from that Food Lion and Mill Creek area north to town, which I think has been expressed for a while now, as well as the lack of safe crossings in town across 64. We also had Allison Rabel talk about civic access, and she provided a helpful presentation for participants to learn how to search using property IDs to find out information about activity. And Tanya also indicated that the development dashboard app is returning soon. The last item, Karen, you presented an update on the stream buffer protection working session. And I think that was specific to not requiring permits to remove invasives. Is there anything else about that you wanted to add?
No, they were all
Okay.
here for that fun hearing, so.
Okay.
I just told them what we talked about.
Great. Yeah, that's all I have. Do you have anything to add?
That was an excellent summation.
Great.
Report. You have a report?
I do not.
Okay, well, I have a report. I have a lot of material here, but it's not for me to also regurgitate the meeting. But the Historic Preservation Committee met and I attended. Both things were true. It was a miracle. Sorry, I was sick for a while, so I missed the two they had. But anyway, really the balance of the meeting was spent on a presentation about the Ravenna Community and Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, and it was in relation to the fact that the county Historic Preservation Committee has been wanting to expand the marker program, which I mentioned in the past, but and we've been talking about it for quite some time, but we were told, wait till the comprehensive plan's adopted and all the goals for historic preservation are adopted, and then come forward with the marker program. So they've been working on that. Now, we would be going to the Board of Supervisors and asking for funding for a marker program. There was a marker program where several markers, local historic markers that the county has put in have been done. And that was specifically through an earlier allocation from the board for underrepresented communities. You know, so African-American communities, untold stories, those kind of things. That fund has pretty much been used up. So we would like to create a marker program where everyone in the county could know about it and your community could apply and make a compelling case, and applications would be ranked, and we talked about this before. So, but this group really wanted to kind of get ahead of the game, and so they came in and made a presentation. And it was really compelling, I have to say. We didn't make any decision on it because we haven't got our marker program nor our budget yet, but I talked about Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, founded in 1874. It was started less than 10 years after emancipation. Tinsey Woodfolk started the Pleasant Grove Church. And he was originally appearing in the 1870 census as a farm laborer who could not write but able to read, and by 1880 had become fully literate and started his occupation as a preacher, following in his grandfather's footsteps. There's a lot more history to this. That church eventually was also a school for African-American children who learned to read and write. And then later on, they were able to build a more substantial church in that same general location. They also had a whole community around there of freed African-Americans who had got a little parcel of land and created their little mini farm or their homestead. But when the airport came in, it's a similar story to other stories we know about Vinegar Hill and elsewhere, where they said, we'd like your land. You can either sell it outright or we will get it by eminent domain and give you what you thought it was worth. And they were able to keep the church building, but most people lost their property through the airport. And then when the airport needed to expand to have larger planes land there, then the FAA said, well, you can't have that church with the steeple there. That has to go too. So that was also bought, and then they bought another property nearby, or created another church nearby, but now they have a mortgage, whereas before they were debt-free. Fast forward to the present day, and I didn't know all this history about how the airport was created. That's way before I moved here, but they were promised in multiple occasions a marker to mark the community and the church, and they never got it. And that's a very long time since that community was there. They also talked about they talked about the fact that a lot of their, I don't know if I can say it, a lot of their relatives are buried under runways. So it just seemed like a real injustice. So anyway, the marker program will eventually get established. And they've done quite a lot to do their documentation and get all their materials together for a marker. And we would have to work out with the airport and beat out where it could go. And they have to compete in the program just like everyone else. But it's my hope that the marker program would have enough funds to, do 5 or 6 markers, and it wouldn't take forever to establish. So that will probably come back to the historic committee, but they've done an excellent job of just documenting. And it almost struck me this would be a really amazing oral history project to document other lost communities of Albemarle. Yeah, it'd be a really neat. I mean, I just kind of got carried away, but I'll stop. That's not part. Nobody talked about that part. That's just my idea. But anyway, so a very kind of emotional and important meeting.
I know a guy who's interested in doing oral histories, by the way.
Pardon? Yes, I know.
So it brings up a question, I guess, for Mr. Barnes. So where are we in the marker program?
I know that Chris Taggart is working with the folks over in Jesse. I'm blanking on exactly what Jesse's department is, but they are working on a marker program. They have that committee.
It's one and the same.
Same one.
Same thing. It's just he had a fund for displaced, disadvantaged communities and they were to do 5 markers and that's been finished.
Hmm.
So we need a new program with a new budget.
And I'm sorry, I don't know all the details, but my understanding was there was some funding coming out of the office, out of Jesse's office for that funding. That's what I thought I had understood.
Yeah, he said in the meeting, he was there, that he had enough money to do the one last marker that is under production. But we need more money. It's not up to Michael to give it to us as a board, but
Yeah, no.
that's
I didn't
really-
mean to put Mr. Barnes on the spot, but I just
just
thought,
like
well, actually, I remember you brought this up a while ago in terms of the marker program. and
the being told we should wait until.
Yeah.
Because that original Jesse's program wants to do 5 and those have been done. So the idea is to create a ongoing program to recognize important places and cultures. And we created a whole bunch of different kinds of categories too. Historic stores and even a landscape category for historic landscapes. So anyway, we'll see.
Well, thank you for bringing
done.
that. I was not aware of that history there either. There's no more report. Do you have a report?
I would, go ahead.
If there's no more reports, Mr. Barnes, will you give us the Board of Supervisors from, let's see, April 15th and April 22nd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there were those 2 meetings, this being budget season. A lot of the attention has been on the budget, which was adopted by the board on 4/22. The meeting on April 15th, there were 2 items probably of interest to you all. One that you may hear from folks in the development community, an increased fee schedule for many of the applications that are in the CDD, purview was one item. And the second one was that staff has been working to develop an implementation for AC 44. And the direction was to go to the board with the work products that we would be doing as part of that implementation. And so we took 5 work products to the board for their approval. Our intent is to bring those back to you at the second meeting in May. And we're still making lots of other progress on exactly what it means to do those work products. But the 5 work products are updating the zoning ordinance or zoning modernization effort, AC activity center plans, multimodal plan, the rural area plan, and finally, we're calling it administration of AC 44, which is really trying to tie the comprehensive plan and its over 350 goals to the board's strategic plan where applicable, so that they actually start to become something that's funded where applicable, and also to have metrics for tracking the implementation of those actions. Again, we're going to come back and talk to you all a lot more in depth about that next month.
Okay. Thank you. You have any new business?
So I have a question, sorry, related to something that was brought up in one of the reports. It was mentioned the development dashboard that's being brought back. There used to be building reports that went back for quite some time. It had a lot of detailed information, like this many units of these types. And they had it broken out by rural area and development area. So you could look very clearly, like, are we meeting our comprehensive plan goals or not? Is development occurring in the place that we want it to occur? Whatever happened to those building reports, and are we going to start producing those again?
They're being reconstituted. As we switched over from the County View system, it was you could pull those reports out quite easily. With the new EP&L system, we had to reconfigure some things it covers what we were giving certificate of occupancies or COs for finished projects by type and location. So that will be brought back. The development dashboard is more a forward-looking one. It sort of says how many rezonings or subdivisions have been, approved for future development, but not yet built. And so that's sort of like tracking the potential of new development that's coming out. That as well, what we've managed to do on that one is, we have the tabular data and we're trying to reestablish the mapping component, which hopefully we'll be able to get, accomplished soon.
Great, thanks.
I just want to say, I think it's a very good question, and it's really important that we start to measure better how well we're doing, because I know with the last two build out analysis, there were some theoretical maximum assumptions that were made that I think don't give an accurate light of what is going to happen in the future. And so I think having measurable data about how well we're doing is a very good point. I do have one other piece of new business. Today and yesterday, I took the first 2 days of the VCU Planning Commissioner Certification course, and it was wonderful. But I would just like to say that I don't know how many of you have taken it. I think Julian told me he had taken it, and he thought maybe he was the last person to take it. But for me today, the most compelling reason to take it was because I was in a room for 2 whole days collaboratively with planning commissioners from 43 just different jurisdictions. So there was a lot of sharing of ideas, talking about things like affordable housing, form-based code. And so I don't know if any of you have ever thought of it or if you've taken it, but I found it to be very helpful.
I just received an email because it was full, so I wasn't able to go, but I think they just released dates for 2 more that maybe are July, September, or August, October. So I might follow up with you.
Please do.
And I also, you missed my speech about about the American Planning Association Virginia chapter meeting. It's at the end of July, and they have a track for planning commissioners. And you can hang out with those people for days again. And you can go in and dip in and out. So they have sessions going all the time. And I really enjoyed it because it was just fascinating to hear how other commissions were organized or what their challenges were, and kind of cathartic. Like, wow, you guys are
The
have
big
same
topic
problems.
outside of affordable housing, in case you didn't know, is data centers.
Yeah.
So,
I apologize if you already have, but did you send was there an email distributed to all of us with the dates and details on that?
Michael sent it a while ago and said,
Oh, okay.
Commissioner
look for
Farrar, I believe is going, and if anyone else wants to go or something. It's only $50, like for the conference if you're a commissioner.
Where is it?
In
It's
Danville.
in Danville,
Oh,
which they won like the state planning awards. They like swept all the awards last year.
So did we resolve the conflict with we had a planned meeting for that date?
Well, so far, Karen's the only one I know that has expressed an interest in going, and so right now I don't have anything right now, the schedule's still open that far out.
Yeah, it was
But
just
I
one of the
haven't
dates that
canceled the
we-
meeting because of that or done something else.
Yeah, I'm
If
thinking of
if
going.
I do hear, if there are more commissioners who will not be here because they're going to that, we should please let me know sooner rather than later, and then we can schedule around that meeting.
I would be interested.
It's a good time. Like I said, I'll be there.
Well, there it is.
Any chance I could carpool with someone?
Haven't seen you after hours.
I'm thinking of going as well. I'm working on another work-related conflict in those. So if I can move that, then I'll let you know. Within the next week, I should be able to let you know.
That's fine. Just let me know in the next couple of weeks. We'll be okay.
Sounds good.
And I'll be presenting on our work in Danville.
cool.
Come see me.
Right.
What-
We have
what's the
any
date?
old business?
So we had I know that the fill ordinance came before us and was deferred.
Which one, Lonnie? I'm sorry, what ordinance?
So there was an ordinance about fill.
Oh, the Phil got pulled.
Yeah, they got
It was
got
gonna come,
pulled.
but then it got pulled.
And I've gotten some questions about, why was that pulled and when is it coming back to us? I just wondered like if you had providing clarity on that, what was missing in that needs to be corrected, and like when do you think it'll come back?
I'll let Mr. Swoda speak to that.
He looks
Sort of
excited.
working a lot on that particular issue.
He's so glad you asked.
So we met with some of our state, Bart Swoboda, Deputy
your name.
Director.
Please state your name.
Oh, Bart Swoboda, Deputy Director, Community Development, Zoning Administrator. We got some feedback from our stakeholders that things weren't clear when we sat down with them. There was some rearrangement, not necessarily content-wise, but some rearrangement, some clarification that we did or are working on. The plan moving forward is to take all the stakeholder groups and have one large meeting with feedback with them, and then bring that back to the PC after that. I'm not quite sure on the dates. We're working on some of that, and currently, along with identifying some of the legislative mandate changes that we have to make and seeing how all that fits together in the work program. But we're hoping to bring that to you sooner than later. Within the end of summer, I believe.
Great, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Right. No more old business. It's good to see you again, Mr. Commissioner Moore.
Glad to be
Welcome
here.
back.
Good to be seen.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn the Albemarle County Planning Commission until May 12th, 2026 at 6 p.m.